what's up, guys? Guy and Bugs, Sweet Cheddar, Pepperoni, String Dog. Hi, guys. God dang, how many times do you stream a day? I know, right? Monday, twice. Now, twice on Mondays. Because we're gonna do, like, relaxation bedtime reading. I'm so nervous. I get so nervous for this stream. Instead of chess. Alright, can you guys hear me? Dun, 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 dun. After a long, tough day, this is the best thing to do for bed. That's so sweet. Okay. I think I have to pull it, like, pretty close. Hello? Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Is it good? Okay. I'm too nervous. I'm making myself too hot. Guy in box. Oh! Why can I see that on that monitor but not this one? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. So guys, what is... I know, dumb pickle. Yeah, we're not playing chess. Monday nights now we do relaxation reading. So it might not be your cup of tea. Wait, what? What? Okay, so nobody saw last week, apparently. Okay, no, I'm like really nervous and sweaty. Oh my god. Alright, hold on. Let me open my door. Hey, coach. We can hear you. Good. That's why I haven't streamed yet. I'd be too nervous. It does make you nervous. So yes, we're on chapter 3, guys. If you want to catch up with the first 2 chapters, it's on YouTube. I put it on YouTube. I figured it out how to get it on YouTube. And it's also on the Twitch videos as well. Don't be nervous, it's not your first time. I'm still nervous. I can see your GameCube. Oh yeah. I was gonna do that. Yeah, that's my GameCube. I came over here to listen to you whisper in my ear. Okay. Okay, before I do that, let me go open my door. I'll be right back. On YouTube, great. Yeah, I figured it out. It would only let me put 15-minute videos at a time because I didn't confirm my email address. Yeah, who knew? Link to YouTube. I'm gonna get a button for YouTube. I don't have the link right now, but yeah. Have a good stream. Thanks, Guy and Fox. I haven't seen any other games. Oh yeah, spoilers. Alright guys, ready? Here we go. I'm nervous, don't look at me, okay? You guys, you can catch it later in the video if you want, or not. I'm too nervous. Okay, here we go. Chapter 3. See, I love how she does the chapters. It's very cool. Do you guys remember what happened? Yes, have a good stream. Thank you, Guy Fox. Okay, I'm all sweaty already. So, what happened in the last one? Katniss, we learned about Katniss, and she took her place for her sister. And then we figured out how Katniss and Peeta know each other. And now, yeah, they just got called. I'm ready. Okay, you're going to be nervous. Only the first 2 sentences. Right? Okay, if you say so. Okay. The moment the anthem ends, we are taken into custody. I don't mean we're handcuffed or anything, but a group of peacekeepers marches us through the front door of the Justice Building. Maybe tributes have tried to escape in the past. I've never seen that happen, though. Once inside, I'm conducted to a room and left alone. It's the richest place I've ever been in, with thick, deep carpets and a velvet couch and chairs. I know velvet because my mother has a dress with a collar made of the stuff. When I sit on the couch, I can't help running my fingers over the fabric repeatedly. It helps to calm me as I try to prepare for the next hour, the time allotted for the tributes to say goodbye to their loved ones. I cannot afford to get upset, to leave this room with puffy eyes and a red nose. Crying is not an option. There will be more cameras at the train station. My sister and my mother come first. I reach out to Prim, and she climbs on my lap, her arms around my neck, head on my shoulder, just like she did when she was a toddler. My mother sits beside me and wraps her arms around us. For a few minutes we say nothing. Then I start telling them all the things they must remember to do, now that I will not be there to do them for them. Prim is not to take any tesserae. They can get by if they're careful on selling Prim's goat milk and cheese and the small apothecary business my mother now runs for the people in the seam. Gail will get her the herbs. The herbs she doesn't grow herself, but she must be very careful to describe them because he's not as familiar with them as I am. He'll also bring them game. He and I made a pact about this a year ago, and will probably not ask for the compensation, but they should thank him with some kind of trade, like milk or medicine. I don't bother suggesting Prim learn to hunt. I tried to teach her a couple of times, and it was disastrous. The woods terrified her, and whenever I shot something, she'd get teary and talk about how we might be able to heal it if we got it home soon enough. But she makes out well with her goat, so I concentrate on that. When I am done with instructions about fuel and trading and staying in school, I turn to my mother and grip her arm hard. Listen to me. Are you listening to me? She nods, alarmed by my intensity. She must know what's coming. You can't leave again, I say. My mother's eyes find the floor. I know. I won't. I couldn't help what... Well, you have to help it this time. You can't clock out and leave Prim on her own. There's no me now to keep you both alive. It doesn't matter what happens. Whatever you see on the screen, you have to promise me you'll fight through it. My voice has risen to a shout. In it is all the anger, all the fear I felt at her abandonment. She pulls her arm from my grasp, moved to anger herself. I was ill. I could have treated myself if I had the medicine I have now. The part about her being ill might be true. I've seen her bring back people suffering from immobilizing sadness. Perhaps it is a sickness, but it's one we can't afford. Then take it, and take care of her, I say. I'll be all right, Katniss, says Prim, clasping my face in her hands. But you have to take care too. You're so fast and brave. Maybe you can win. I can't win. Prim must know that in her heart. The competition will be far beyond my abilities. Kids from the wealthier districts, where winning is a huge honor, have been trained their whole lives for this. Boys who are 2-3 times my size. Girls who knew 20 different ways to kill you with a knife. Oh, there will be people like me too. People to weed out before the real fun begins. Maybe, I say, because I can hardly tell my mother to carry on if I've already given up myself. Besides, it isn't in my nature to go down without a fight, even when things are insurmountable. Then we'd be rich as Haymitch. I don't care if we're rich. I just want you to come home. You will try, won't you? Really, really try? Asks Prim. Really, really try, I swear it, I say. And I know, because of Prim, I'll have to. And then the peacekeeper is out the door, signaling our time's up. And we're all hugging one another so hard it hurts. And all I'm saying is I love you. I love you both. And they're saying it back. And then the peacekeeper orders them out, and the door closes. I bury my head in one of the velvet pillows as if this can block the whole thing out. Someone else enters the room, and when I look up, I'm surprised to see it's the baker, Peter Malark's father. I can't believe he's come to visit me. After all, I'll be trying to kill his son soon. But we do know each other a bit, and he knows Prim even better. When she sells her goat cheeses in the hop, she puts 2 of them aside for him, and he gives her a generous amount of bread in return. We always wait to trade with him when his witch of a wife isn't around, because he's so much nicer. I feel certain he would never have hit his son the way she did over the burned bread. But why has he come to see me? The baker sits awkwardly on the edge of one of the plush chairs. He's a big, broad-shouldered man with burn scars from years in the oven. He must have just said goodbye to his son. He pulls a white paper package from his jacket pocket and holds it out to me. I open it and find cookies. These are a luxury we can never afford. Thank you, I say. The baker's not a very talkative man, in the best of times, and today he has no words at all. I had some of your bread this morning. My friend Gail gave you a squirrel for it. He nods, as if remembering the squirrel. Not your best trade, I say. He shrugs as if it couldn't possibly matter. Then I can't think of anything else, so we sit in silence until a peacemaker summons him. He rises and coughs to clear his throat. I'll keep an eye on the little girl. Make sure she's eating. I feel some of the pressure in my chest lighten at his words. People deal with me, but they are generally fond of Prim. Maybe there will be enough fondness to keep her alive. My next guest is also unexpected. Madge walks straight to me. She is not weepy or evasive. Instead, there's an urgency about her tone that surprises me. They let you wear one thing from your district in the arena. One thing to remind you of home. Will you wear this? She holds out the circular golden pin that was on her dress earlier. I hadn't paid much attention to it before, but now I see it's a small bird in flight. Your pin? I say. Wearing a token from my district is about the last thing on my mind. Here, I'll put it on your dress, all right? Madge doesn't wait for an answer. She just leans in and fixes the bird to my dress. Promise you'll wear it into the arena, Katniss, she asks. Promise? Yes, I say. Cookies, a pin. I'm getting all kinds of gifts today. Madge gives me one more, a kiss on the cheek. Then she's gone. And I left, thinking that maybe Madge really has been my friend all along. Finally, Gale is here, and maybe there is nothing romantic between us, but when he opens his arms, I don't hesitate to go into them. His body is familiar to me, the way it moves, the smell of wood smoke, even the sound of his heart beating. I know from quiet moments on a hunt, but this is the first time I really feel it, lean and hard-muscled against my own. Listen, he says. Getting a knife should be pretty easy, but if you gotta get your hands on a bow, that's your best chance. They don't always have bows, I say, thinking of the year there were only horrible spiked maces that the tributes had to bludgeon one another to death with. Then make one, says Gale. Even a weak bow is better than no bow at all. I have tried copying my father's bow with poor results. It's not that easy, even if he had to scrap his own work sometimes. I don't even know if there'll be wood, I say. Another year they tossed everybody into a landscape of nothing but boulders and sand and scruffy bushes. I particularly hated that year. Many contestants were bitten by venomous snakes or went insane from thirst. There's almost always some wood, Gale says. Since that year, half of them died of cold. Not much entertainment in that. It's true. We spent one Hunger Games watching the players freeze to death at night. You could hardly see them because they were just huddled in balls and had no wood for fires or torches or anything. It was considered very anticlimactic in the capital. All those quiet, bloodless deaths. Since then, there's usually been wood to make fires. Yes, there's usually some, I say. Katniss, it's just hunting. You're the best hunter I know, says Gale. It's not just hunting. They're armed. They think, I say. So do you. And you've had more practice. Real practice, he says. You know how to kill. Not people, I say. How different can it be, really? Says Gale grimly. The awful thing is that if I can forget they're people, it will be no different at all. The peacekeepers are back too soon, and Gale asks for more time, but they're taking him away, and I start to panic. Don't let them starve, I cry out, clinging to his hand. I won't. You know I won't, Katniss. Remember he says, and they yank us apart and slam the door, and all I'll ever know was he wanted me to remember. I'll never know what he wanted me to remember. It's a short ride from the Justice Building to the train station. I've never been in a car before, rarely even ridden in wagons. In the scene, we travel on foot. I've been right not to cry. The station is swarming with reporters, with their insect-like cameras trained directly on my face. But I've had a lot of practice at wiping my face clean of emotions, and I do this now. I catch a glimpse of myself on the television screen on the wall that's airing my arrival live, and feel gratified that I appear almost bored. Peeta Mellark, on the other hand, has obviously been crying, and interestingly enough, does not seem to be trying to cover it up. I immediately wonder if this will be his strategy in the games, to appear weak and frightened, to reassure the other tributes that he is no competition at all, and then come out fighting. This worked very well for a girl, Johanna Mason, from District 7, a few years back. She seemed like such a sniveling, cowardly fool that no one bothered about her until there were only a handful of contestants left. It turned out she could kill viciously. Pretty clever, the way she played it. But this seems an odd strategy for Peeta Mellark, because he's a baker's son. All those years around have made him broad-shoulders and strong. It will take an awful lot of weeping to convince anyone to overlook him. We have to stand for a few minutes in the doorway of the train while the cameras gobble up our images. Then we're allowed inside, and the doors close mercifully behind us. The train begins to move at once. The speed initially takes my breath away. Of course I've never been on a train, as travel between the districts is forbidden, except for officially sanctioned duties. For us, that's mainly train spotting coal, but this is no ordinary coal train. Transporting coal. It's one of the high-speed capital models that average 250 miles per hour. Our journey to the capital will take less than a day. In school, they tell us the capital was built in place, once called the Rockies. District 12 was in a region known as Appalachia. Even hundreds of years ago, they mined coal here, which is why our miners have to dig so deep. Somehow, it all comes back to coal in school. Besides basic reading and math, most of our instruction is coal-related, except for the weekly lecture on history at Penam. It's mostly a lot of blather about what we owe the capital. I know there must be more than they're telling us, an actual account of what happened during the rebellion, but I don't spend much time thinking about it. Whatever the truth is, I don't see how it'll help me get food on the table. The tribute chain is fancier than even the room in the Justice Building. We are each given our own chambers that have a bedroom, a dressing area, and a private bathroom with hot and cold running water. We don't have hot water at home unless we boil it. There are drawers filled with fine clothes, and Effie Trinket tells me to do anything I want, wear anything I want. Everything is at my disposal. Just be ready for supper in an hour. I peel off my mother's blue dress and take a hot shower. I've never had a shower before. It's like being in summer rain, only warmer. I dress in a dark green shirt and pants. At the last minute, I remember Madge's little gold pin. For the first time, I get a good look at it. It's as if someone fashioned a small golden bird and attached a ring around it. The bird is connected to the ring only by its wingtips. I suddenly recognize it. A mockingjay. They're funny birds, and something of a slap in the face to the capital. During the rebellion, the capital bred a series of genetically altered animals as weapons. The common term of them, or mutations, or sometimes mutts, for short. One was a special bird called jabberjay that had the ability to memorize and repeat whole human conversations. They were homing birds, exclusively male, that were released into regions where the capital's enemies were known to be hiding. After the birds gathered words, they'd fly back to centers to be recorded. It took people a while to realize what was going on in the districts, how private conversations were being transmitted. Then, of course, the rebels fed the capital endless lies, and the joke was on it. So the centers were shut down, and the birds were abandoned to die off in the wild. Only they didn't die off. Instead, the jabberjays mated with female mockingbirds, creating a whole new species that could replicate both bird whistles and human melodies. They had lost the ability to enunciate words, but could still mimic a range of human vocal sounds, from a child's high-pitched warble to a man's deep tones. And they could recreate songs, not just a few notes, but whole songs with multiple verses, if you had the patience to sing them, and if they liked your voice. My father was particularly fond of mockingjays. When we went hunting, he would whistle or sing complicated songs to them, and after a polite pause, they'd always sing back. Not everyone is treated with such respect. Whenever my father sang, all the birds in the area would fall silent and listen. His voice was that beautiful, high and clear, and so filled with life it made you want to laugh and cry at the same time. I could never bring myself to continue the practice after he was gone. Still, there's something comforting about the little bird. It's like having a piece of my father with me, protecting me. I fastened the pin onto my shirt, and with the dark green fabric as a background, I can almost imagine the mockingjay flying through the trees. Effie Trinket comes to collect me for supper. I follow her through the narrow, rocking corridor into a dining room with polished, paneled walls. There's a table where all the dishes are highly breakable. Peter Millark sits waiting for us, the chair next to him empty. "Where's Hamish?" asks Effie Trinket brightly. "Last time I saw him, he said he was going to take a nap," says Peter. "Well, it's been an exhausting day," says Effie. "I think he's relieved by Hamish's absence. Who can blame her?" The supper comes in courses. A thick carrot soup, green salad, lamb chops and mashed potatoes, cheese and fruit, a chocolate cake. Throughout the meal, Effie Trinket keeps reminding us to save space because there's more to come, but I'm stuffing myself because I've never had food like this. So good and so much, and because probably the best thing I can do between now and the games is put on a few pounds. "At least you two have decent manners," says Effie as we're finishing the main course. The pair last year ate everything with their hands, like a couple of savages. It completely upset my digestion. The pair last year were two kids from the scene who'd never, not one day of their lives, had enough to eat. And when they did have food, table manners were surely the last thing on their minds. Peter's a baker's son. My mother taught Prim and me to eat properly, so yes, I can handle a fork and knife. But I hate Effie Trinket's comments so much, I make a point of eating the rest of my meal with my fingers. Then I wipe my hands on the tablecloth. This makes her purse her lips tightly together. Now that the meal's over, I'm fighting to keep the food down. I can see Peter's looking a little green too. Neither of our stomach is used to such rich fare. But if I can hold down Greasy Sally's concoction of mice meat, pig entrails, and tree bark, a winter specialty, I'm determined to hang on to this. We go to another compartment to watch the recap of the reapings across Pandam.
They try to stagger them throughout the day so a person could conceivably watch the whole thing live. But only people in the capital could really do that, since none of them have to attend reapings themselves. One by one, we see the other reapings, the names called, the volunteers stepping forward, or more often not. We examine the faces of the kids who will be our competition. A few stand out in my mind. A monstrous boy who lunges forward to volunteer from District 2. A fox-faced girl with sleek red hair from District 5. A boy with a crippled foot from District 12. And most hauntingly, a 12-year-old girl from District 11. She has dark brown skin and eyes, but other than that, she's very like Prim in size and demeanor. Only when she mounts the stage and they ask her for volunteers, all you can hear is the wind whistling through the decrepit buildings around her. There's no one willing to take her place. Last of all, they show District 12. Prim being cold, me running forward to volunteer. You can't miss the desperation in my voice as I shove Prim behind me, as if I'm afraid no one will hear and they'll take Prim away. But, of course, they do hear. I see Gail pulling her off me and watch myself mount the stage. The commentators are not sure what to say about the crowd's refusal to applaud. The silent salute, one that says District 12 has always been a bit backward, but that local customs can be charming. As if on cue, Hamish falls off the stage, and they groan comically. Peeta's name is drawn, and he quietly takes his place. We shake hands. They cut to the anthem again, and the program ends. Effie Trinket is disgruntled about the state of her wig. Your mentor has a lot to learn about presentation. A lot about televised behavior. Peeta unexpectedly laughs. He was drunk, says Peeta. He's drunk every year. Every day, I add. I can't help smirking a little. Effie Trinket makes it sound like Hamish just has somewhat rough manners that could be corrected with a few tips from her. Yes, hisses Effie Trinket. How odd you two find it amusing. You know your mentor is your lifeline to the world in these games, the one who advises you, lines up your sponsors, and dictates the presentation of any gifts. Hamish can well be the difference between your life and your death. Just then, Hamish staggers into the compartment. I miss supper, he says in a slurred voice. Then he vomits all over the expensive carpet and falls in the mess. So laugh away, says Effie Trinket. She hops in her pointy shoes around the pool of vomit and flees the room. That's the end of chapter 3. What's up, guys? Elba, hey Elba. Who will read the part of Woody Harrelson? That's Woody Harrelson, yeah. He's Hamish Bill, yeah. I'm drunk, time for sleep book. Hey Mick, I'll stick around a bit till part time. New Orleans. You're in New Orleans, that's exciting. I know about you, welcome. There's a William Dafoe narrative, sounds so close to this. In the last few months, not sure who wrote it. Oh, nice. Prim Lake, yeah. This has been a Livervox recording. Alright, guys. I'm gonna do... Should we do one more? I'm so tired. We'll do one more chapter, okay? I'm nervous again. When I look at chat, I get nervous. I forget about it when I read, and then I get nervous. Oh my god, people looking at me. Thanks. Okay. One more. Okay. Chapter 4. For a few moments, Pete and I take in the scene of our mentor trying to rise out of the slippery vial stuffed from his stomach. The reek of vomit and raw spirits almost brings my dinner up. We exchange a glance. Obviously, Hamish isn't much. Effie Trinket is right about one thing. Once we're in the arena, he's all we've got. As if by some unspoken agreement, Pete and I each take one of Haymitch's arms and help him to his feet. I tripped? Haymitch asks. Smells bad. He wipes his hand on his nose, smearing his face with vomit. Let's get you back to your room, says Peta. Clean you up a bit. We half carry Haymitch back to his compartment. Since we can't exactly set him down on an embroidered bedspread, we haul him into the bathtub and turn the shower on him. He hardly notices. It's okay, Peta says to me. I'll take it from here. I can't help feeling a little grateful, since the last thing I want to do is strip down Haymitch, wash the vomit out of his chest hair, and tuck him into bed. Possibly Peta is trying to make a good impression on me, to be his favorite once the games begin. But judging by the state he's in, Haymitch will have no memory of this tomorrow. Alright, I say. I can send one of the capital people to help you. There's any number on the train, cooking for us, waiting on us, guarding us. Taking care of us is their job. No, I don't want them, says Peta. I nod and head to my own room. I understand how Peta feels. I can't stand the sight of the capital people myself, but making them deal with Haymitch might be a small form of revenge. So I'm pondering the reason why he insists on taking care of Haymitch, and all of a sudden I think it's because he's being kind, just as he was kind to give me the bread. The idea pulls me up short. A kind Peta Malark is far more dangerous to me than an unkind one. Kind people have a way of working their way inside me, rooting there, and I can't let Peta do this, not where we're going. So I decide from this moment on to have as little as possible to do with the baker's son. When I get back to my room, the train is pausing on a platform to refuel. I quickly open the window, toss the cookies Peta's father gave me out the train, and slam the glass shut. No more. No more of either of them. Unfortunately, the packet of cookies hits the ground and bursts open in a patch of dandelions by the track. I only see that image for a moment because the train is off again, but it's enough. Enough to remind me of that other dandelion in the schoolyard years ago. I had just turned away from Peta Malark's bruised face when I saw the dandelion, and I knew hope wasn't lost. He plucked it carefully and hurried home. I grabbed a bucket in Prim's hand and headed to the meadow, and yes, it was dotted with the golden-headed weeds. After we'd harvested those, we scrounged along inside the fence for probably a mile until we filled the buckets with dandelion greens, stems, and flowers. That night we gorged ourselves on dandelion salad and the rest of the bakery bread. What else? Prim asked me. What other food can we find? All kinds of things, I promised her. I just have to remember them. My mother had a book she bought with her apothecary shop. The pages were made of an old parchment and covered in inked drawings of plants. Neat handwritten blocks told their names, where to gather them, when they came in bloom, their medical uses. But my father added other entries to the book. Plants for eating, not healing. Dandelions, pokeweed, wild onion, pine. Prim and I spent the rest of the night poring over those pages. The next day, we were off school. For a while, I hung around the edges of the meadow, but finally I worked up the courage to go under the fence. It was the first time I'd been there alone, without my father's weapons to protect me. But I retrieved the small bow and arrows he'd made from a hollow tree. I probably didn't go more than 20 yards into the woods that day. Most of the time I perched up in the branches of an old oak, hoping for game to come. After several hours, I had the good luck to kill a rabbit. I'd shot a few rabbits before with my father's guidance, but this I'd done on my own. We hadn't had meat in months. The sight of the rabbit seemed to stir something in my mother. She roused herself, skinned the carcass, and made a stew with the meat and some more greens Prim had gathered. Then she acted confused and went back to bed. But when the stew was done, we made her eat a bowl. The woods became our savior, and each day I went a bit farther into his arms. It was slow going at first, but I was determined to feed us. I stole eggs from nests, caught fish in nets, sometimes managed to shoot a squirrel or rabbit for a stew, and gathered the various plants that sprung up beneath my feet. Plants are tricky. Many are edible, but one false mouthful and you're dead. I checked and double-checked the plants. I harvested with my father's pitchers. I kept us alive. Any sign of danger, a distant howl, the inexplicable break of a branch, sent me flying back to the fence at first. Then I began to risk climbing trees to escape the wild dogs that quickly got bored and moved on. Bears and cats lived deeper in, perhaps disliking the sooty reek of our district. On May 8th, I went to the Justice Building, signed up for my tesserae, and pulled home my first batch of grain and oil in Prim's toy wagon. On the 8th of every month, I was entitled to do the same. I couldn't stop hunting and gathering, of course. The grain was not enough to live on, and there were other things to buy. Soap and milk and thread that we didn't absolutely have to eat. What we didn't absolutely have to eat, I began to trade at the Hob. It was frightening to enter that place without my father at my side, but people had respected him, and they accepted me. Game was game, after all, no matter who shot it. I also sold at the back doors of the wealthier clients in town, trying to remember what my father had told me, and learning a few tricks as well. The butcher would buy my rabbits, but not squirrels. The baker enjoyed squirrel, but would only trade for one if his wife wasn't around. The head peacekeeper loved wild turkey. The mayor had a passion for strawberries. In late summer, I was washing up in a pond when I noticed the plants growing around me, tall with leaves like arrowheads, blossoms with 3 white petals. I knelt down in the water, my fingers digging into the soft mud, and I pulled up handfuls of the roots. Small bluish tubers that don't look like much, but boiled or baked are as good as any potato. Katniss, I said aloud. It's the plant I was named for. And I heard my father's voice joking. As long as you can find yourself, you'll never starve. I spent hours stirring up the pond bed with my toes and stick, gathering the tubers that floated to the top. That night we feasted on fish and Katniss roots, till we were all, for the first time, in months, full. Slowly, my mother returned to us. She began to clean and cook and preserve some of the food I bought in her winter. People traded us or paid money for her medical remedies. One day, I heard her singing. Prim was thrilled to have her back, but I kept watching, waiting for her to disappear on us again. I didn't trust her. In some small, gnarled place inside me hated her, for her weakness, for her neglect, for the months she had put us through. Prim forgave her, but I had to take a step from my mother, put up a wall to protect myself from needing her, and nothing was ever the same between us again. Now I was going to die, without that ever being set right. I thought of how I yelled at her today, in the Justice Building. I had told her I loved her too, though, so maybe it would balance out. For a while, I stand staring out the train window, wishing I could open it again, but unsure of what would happen at such speed. In the distance, I see the lights of another district. 7? 10? I don't know. I think about the people in their houses, settling in for bed. I imagine my home, with its shutters drawn tight. What are they doing now? My mother and Prim. Were they able to eat supper? The fish stew and strawberries, or did it lie untouched on their plates? Did they watch the recap of the day's events on the battered old TV that sits on the table against the wall? Surely there were more tears. Is my mother holding up, being strong for Prim, or has she already started to slip away, leaving the weight of the world on my sister's fragile shoulders? Prim will undoubtedly sleep with my mother tonight. The thought of that scruffy old buttercup posting himself on the bed to watch over Prim comforts me. If she cries, he will nose his way into her arms and curl up there until she calms down and falls asleep. I'm so glad I didn't drown him. Imagining my home makes me ache with loneliness. This day has been endless. Could Gail and I have been eating blackberries only this morning? Seems like a lifetime ago. Like a long dream that deteriorated into a nightmare. Maybe if I go to sleep, I'll wake up back in District 12 where I belong. Probably the drawers hold any number of nightgowns, but I just strip off my shirt and pants and climb into bed in my underwear. The sheets are made of soft, silky fabric. A thick, fluffy comforter gives immediate warmth. If I'm going to cry, now is the time to do it. By morning I'll be able to wash the damage done by the tears from my face. But no tears come. I'm too tired or too numb to cry. The only thing I feel is a desire to be somewhere else. So I let the train rock me into oblivion. Gray light is leaking through the curtains when the rapping rouses me. I hear Effie Trinket's voice calling me to rise. Up, up, up. It's going to be a big, big, big day. I try and imagine for a moment what it must be like inside that woman's head. What thoughts fill her waking hours. What dreams come to her at night. I have no idea. I put the green outfit back on since it's not really dirty, just slightly crumpled from spending the night on the floor. My fingers trace the circle around the little gold mockingjay, and I think of the woods, and my father, and my mother and Prim waking up, having to get on with things. I slept in the elaborate braided hair my mother did for the weeping, and it doesn't look too bad, so I just leave it up. We can't be far from the capital now, and once we reach the city, my stylist will dictate my look for the opening ceremonies tonight anyway. I just hope I get one who doesn't think nudity is the last word in fashion. As I enter the dining car, Effie Trinket brushes by me with a cup of black coffee. She's muttering obscenities under her breath. Hamish, his face puffy and red from the previous day's indulgences, is chuckling. Peeta holds a roll and looks somewhat embarrassed. Sit down, says Hamish, waving me over. The moment I slide into my chair, I'm served an enormous platter of food. Eggs, ham, piles of fried potatoes. A tureen of fruit sits on ice to keep it chilled. The basket of rolls they set before me would keep my family going for a week. There's an elegant glass of orange juice. At least I think it's orange juice. I've only even tasted an orange once. At New Year's when my father bought one as a special treat. A cup of coffee. My mother adores coffee, which we could almost never afford, but it only tastes bitter and thin to me. A rich brown cup of something I've never seen. They call it hot chocolate, says Peeta. It's good. I take a sip of the hot, sweet, creamy liquid, and a shudder runs through me. Even though the rest of the meal beckons, I ignore it until I've drained my cup. Then I stuff down every mouthful I can hold, which is a substantial amount, being careful not to overdo it on the richest stuff. One time my mother told me that I always eat like I'll never see food again, and I said, I won't unless I bring it home. That shut her up. When my stomach feels like it's about to split open, I lean back and take in my breakfast companions. Peeta is still eating, breaking off bits of roll and dipping them in hot chocolate. Hamish hasn't paid much attention to his platter, but he's knocking back a glass of red juice that he keeps thinning with a clear liquid from a bottle. Judging by the fumes, it's some kind of spirit. I don't know Hamish, but I've seen him often enough in the hub, tossing handfuls of money on the counter over the woman who sells white liquor. He'll be incoherent by the time we reach the capital. I realize I detest Hamish. No wonder the District 12 tributes never stand a chance. It isn't just that we've been underfed and lack training. Some of our tributes have still been strong enough to make a go of it, but we rarely get sponsors, and he's a big part of the reason why. The rich people who back tributes, either because they're betting on them or simply for the bragging rights of picking a winner, expect someone classier than Hamish to deal with. So, you're supposed to give us advice, I say to Hamish. Here's some advice. Stay alive, says Hamish, and then bursts out laughing. I exchange a look with Peeta before I remember I'm having nothing more to do with him. I'm surprised to see the hardness in his eyes. He generally seems so mild. That's very funny, says Peeta. Suddenly he lashes out at the glass in Hamish's hand. It shatters on the floor, sending the blood-red liquid running through toward the back of the train. Only not to us. Hamish considers this a moment, then punches Peeta in the jaw, knocking him from his chair. When he turns back to reach for the spirits, I drive my knife into the table between his hand and the bottle, barely missing his fingers. I brace myself to deflect his hit, but it doesn't come. Instead, he sits back and squints at us. Well, what's this? Says Hamish. Did I actually get a pair of fighters this year? Peeta rises from the floor and scoops up a handful of ice from under the fruit train. He starts to raise it to the red mark on his jaw. No, says Hamish, stopping him. Let the bruise show. The audience will think you've mixed it up with another tribute before you've even made it to the arena. That's against the rules, says Peeta. Only if they catch you. That bruise will say you fought. You weren't caught, even better, says Hamish. He turns to me. Can you hit anything with that knife besides a table? The bow and arrow is my weapon, but I've spent a fair amount of time throwing knives as well. Sometimes if I've wounded an animal with an arrow, it's better to get a knife into it too before I approach it. I realize that if I want Hamish's attention, this is my moment to make an impression. I yank the knife out of the table, get a grip on the blade, and then throw it into the wall across the room. I was actually just hoping to get a good solid stick, but it lodges in the seam between the two panels, making me look a lot better than I am. Stand over here, both of you, says Hamish, nodding to the middle of the room. We obey, and he circles us, prodding us like animals at times, checking our muscles, examining our faces. Well, you're not completely helpless. Seems fit. And once the shadows get a hold of you, you'll be attractive enough. Peeta and I don't question this. The Hunger Games aren't a beauty contest, but the best-looking tributes always seem to pull more sponsors. All right, I'll make a deal with you. You don't interfere with my drinking, and I'll stay sober enough to help you, says Hamish. But you have to do exactly what I say. It's not much of a deal, but still a giant step forward from 10 minutes ago when we had no guide at all. Fine, says Peeta. So help us, I say. When we get to the arena, what's the best strategy at the cornucopia for someone? One thing at a time. In a few minutes, we'll be pulling into the station. You'll be put in the hands of your stylists. You're not going to like what they do to you. But no matter what it is, don't resist, says Hamish. But, I begin. No buts. Don't resist, says Hamish. He takes the bottle of spirits from the table and leaves the car. As the door swings shut behind him, the car goes dark. There's still a few lights inside, but outside it's as if night has fallen again. I realize we must be in the tunnel that runs up through the mountains into the capital. The mountains form a natural barrier through the capital and the eastern districts. It is almost impossible to enter from the east except through the tunnels. This geographical advantage was a major factor in the districts losing the war that led to my being a tribute today. Since the rebels had to scale the mountains, they were easy targets for the capital's air forces. Peeta Malark and I stand in silence as the train speeds along. The tunnel goes on, and I think of the tons of rock separating me from the sky, and my chest tightens. I hate being encased in stone this way. It reminds me of the mines and my father, trapped unable to reach sunlight, buried forever in the darkness. The train finally begins to slow, and suddenly bright light floods the compartment. We can't help it. Both Pete and I run to the window to see what we've only seen on television. The capital, the ruling city of Panam. The cameras haven't lied about its grandeur. If anything, they have not quite captured the magnificence of the glistening buildings and a rainbow of hues that tower into the air. The shiny cars, the roll down the wide paved streets. The oddly dressed people with bizarre hair and painted faces who have never missed a meal. All the colors seem artificial. The pinks too deep, the greens too bright, the yellows painful to the eyes, like the flat, round discs of hard candy we can never afford to buy at the tiny sweet shop in District 12. The people begin to point at us eagerly as they recognize the tribute train rolling into the city. I step away from the window, sickened by their excitement, knowing they can't wait to watch us die. But Peter holds his ground, actually waving and smiling at the gawking crowd. He only stops when the train pulls into the station, blocking us from their view. He sees me staring at him and shrugs. Who knows, he says. One of them may be rich. I have misjudged him. I think of his actions since the reaping began. The friendly squeeze of my hand, his father showing up with cookies and promising to feed Prim. Did PETA put him up to that? His tears at the station, volunteering to wash Hamish, but then challenging him this morning when apparently the nice guy approach hadn't failed. And now, the waving at the window, already trying to win the crowd. All the pieces are starting to fit, but I sense he has a plan for me. He hasn't accepted his death. He's already fighting hard to stay alive, which also means that kind Peter Malark, the boy who gave me the bread, is fighting hard to kill me. That's the end of chapter 4. Okay, guys. We're gonna start chapter 5 next, the next one. Hey, Booksia, how's it going? A special kind of nightmare. Oh, is it just a normal dream for me? Can you read it in Pepe's voice? Please, it relaxes me too. It does. I'm a big fan. That's not orange juice. Bertra, what's up? Is CGL a category? What is CGL? I don't even know what that is. What is CGL? I had to check in for Joandra's ASMR. I died of curiosity. When they go and start killing mofos. I don't know. I'm not gonna spoil it. It's gonna get pretty intense though. I volunteer as tribute. Pretty smart while everyone else streams arena gigs. Oh, is that going on now? This is a Monday night thing now, every Monday night. And I think I'm gonna start it. I think I'm gonna do it twice a week. I think we're gonna start doing it Monday and Thursday night. So, if you guys want to listen to the first 2 chapters, it's on the YouTube channel, and I think it's still on the video, on the Twitch video too. So I think we'll do more on Thursday nights. Loved it. Oh, it's so great. Why the whispering, sleeping kids? No, it's just I'm being quiet. I get complaints a lot from my neighbors, and I want it to be relaxing too. I want it to be like a relaxing bedtime thing. That's why I started this, because I was like looking for that when I hurt my eye. I wanted to get like a reading channel on Twitch, or like a guided meditation, something that would be nice to go to bed to or relax. So yeah, multi reasons. Hey Indy, you can put a sweaty sock over the mic and talk normal and whispering straight to your voice. Oh, the strawberry day. Ah, thanks, Pepe. Can you read everything again, just louder? Was it too quiet? Was it too quiet? Oh, let me know. Alright. Thanks, Novelli. Good night. Hope to see you next time. so ready for bed now. Good. Alright, guys. I hope you have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. for Chicago time for chess. Okay, probably. I'm not ready for bed. I need more Walking Dead before sleeping. Oops, yeah, that's a relaxing show. I have to catch up on that.